Hey everybody, and welcome to This Week on Point North. I'm Alistair Stevens. It is January the 8th. It's the beginning of a brand new week, and it is a big, big week here at Point North. And I'm noticing as I begin this live session that I've opened up the blinds here in the studio to let in some of the early spring sun. And I'm counting it as early spring sun because it's going to be something like 55 degrees here in Oklahoma City today, which I know is probably much higher than the temperatures that most of you are experiencing right now, particularly those of you on the east coast of the United States, particularly in the northeast. But I'm letting the light in, which is apparently screwed with the white balance of my camera, so everything looks a little washed out and a little strange right now. So forgive me if the lighting that you're accustomed to here from Point North isn't quite in place today. It's just, it's a casual Monday morning kind of vibe here. We're just going to talk a little about the plans coming up this week. We're going to talk a little about the forthcoming patron exclusive book club poll, which I just launched about an hour ago. There's a lot of activity over there, plus a big new announcement. More on that in just a moment. Let's begin, though, by looking at our list for the week. Tonight is a very big night for me personally. Tonight is a very big deal for me personally, because for as long as I have been podcasting on the internet, for as long as I have been talking professionally about stories, I have wanted to dive deep into the fantasy and folklore tradition of fairy stories. And tonight, I'm giving my first session in the Between Worlds class, which I am very, very excited about. It's a project that, as I say, has been a long time coming, and I've been thinking about this class and talking about this class for years now, and it's finally here. So tonight I'm going to talk about J.R.R. Tolkien, and I'm going to talk about C.S. Lewis, and I'm going to talk about Joseph Campbell, and I'm going to talk about monomythic structure, and I'm going to talk about the ways that basic building blocks, atomic units of narrative arise from human consciousness and subconsciousness, and I'm going to talk about how fairy tales have informed human culture for as far back as anyone is aware, and I'm going to talk about how fairy, capital F, lowercase A-E-R-I-E, is one of the most elusive and enchanting elements of particularly Western folklore and fairy tales. So that's going to take place tonight. I know that some of you here joining me live have registered for that class, and it is going to be just a ton of fun. So I hope you're looking forward to that as much as I am. But that is not the only thing that we're looking forward to this week. As I call up my calendar, I'm catching up a little bit for reasons which will become obvious in just a moment. I haven't quite hit all of my goals here this Monday morning because I've been working on some other things, which I'm going to announce in just a moment. Tomorrow, Tuesday, January the 9th at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, is Dear Mr. Potter 38, in which we look at chapters 4, 5, and 6 of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. We're basically going to get to the Quidditch World Cup, which is a really great sequence and a really definitive sequence for what J.K. Rowling is going to do in the rest of Goblet of Fire and what she's going to do in the rest of the series. This is our most purposeful and most emphatic breaking of the narrative frame, breaking of the constraints of the boarding school adventure story that we've seen in the first 3 novels in the Harry Potter series. She's going to shatter our expectations here. She's going to wildly expand the scope of this story, and I cannot wait to talk about that. So that's Dear Mr. Potter 38 tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central. Then on Thursday, that is January the 11th, we're going to venture into the Dead Marshes in the company of Gollum, as well as Frodo and Sam. We're going to look at the division between the two halves of Gollum and the growing division between Frodo and Sam in There and Back Again 47, as we discuss the second chapter of Book 4. There's also going to be some Star Wars talk this week, you guys. I know that I said that the Star Wars lecture was going to be ready last week. I have more thoughts, and I need to see the movie again. So I'm actually going to go and see the movie again, The Last Jedi. I'm going to go and see it again tomorrow night after I'm done with the Dear Mr. Potter session, so that I can really finalize some of the bigger ideas, less about The Last Jedi as a text itself and more about The Last Jedi's place in the Star Wars canon, in the ongoing saga. I think that The Last Jedi has more to say about the other Star Wars movies than any other Star Wars movie. I think that it is really interesting in what it does to our understanding of the story of Star Wars, which is, of course, very important in the context of story in Star Wars. So I'm going to go and see the movie again, pin down some thoughts, and I'm hoping to have that lecture out on Possibly Friday, more likely Saturday this week, because that is not all that I'm doing this week. This coming Friday, that is Friday, January the 12th, over at commonroomradio.com, I will be releasing, in the company of Sarah Kate Pesant and the wonderful Vinton Bain, the first commentary track for our MCU rewatch project. Between now and the release of Avengers Infinity War in a couple of months' time, we're going to watch every single one of the Marvel movies in order, and we're going to record commentary tracks. So we're recording that on Wednesday. That will be released on Friday. If you want to sit with us and watch Iron Man, then you are cordially invited to do so. I think Iron Man is a knockout movie. Iron Man is single-handedly responsible, I think, for the success of the MCU. This was a long shot. This was a Hail Mary pass here back in 2009, and it is riotously successful. What that movie manages to accomplish, not just in terms of telling a focused and cohesive origin story, but in grounding that origin story in something recognizable, in a recognizably real world. It's astonishing. I really, really love that movie. So we're going to have a lot of fun talking about that. And then there will be another episode of Excelsior the following Monday looking at the first volume of the Sailor Moon manga. It is January, which means that it is Sarah's birthday month, which means that she is picking all the topics for Excelsior this month. And she's beginning with the first volume of Sailor Moon. I am a huge Sailor Moon fan. I love that first volume of the manga. In particular, the first couple of volumes, I think, are just fantastic and absolutely definitive of the magical girl genre. I'm really looking forward to discussing that too in the company of Sarah and Vinton. So all of this is to say that there is lots to come this week from Point North Media. Oh, and I didn't even mention the live Q&A. It's going to be a Q&A this week rather than a book club discussion on Friday for patrons. So you can join me if you pledge your support over at patreon.com/pointnorthmedia or at coffeeko-fi.com/pointnorthmedia or at paypal.me/pointnorthmedia. If you pledge your support in any way to Point North, you'll be able to join me for a what is sure to be a riotous Q&A. I will probably have some, I guess preliminary is the wrong word, but I will probably have some developed thoughts on The Last Jedi, if not a full lecture ready to go then. So that is going to take place on Friday afternoon. So lots and lots and lots to come. Speaking of that book club, gosh, Jenna's asking, I'm really excited for these, referring to the commentary tracks from Excelsior. Does listening to the commentary track excuse me from watching the Ant-Man movie? I've got to tell you, Jenna, I have only seen Ant-Man once, and I did not like it. In the time since seeing Ant-Man, I have thought a lot about the other Marvel movies and what they have done to expand our understanding. For the longest time, the MCU gave us superhero movies, and that was it. Iron Man is a classic superhero movie. The Cap trilogy works as classic superhero movies. The Avengers and Age of Ultron work as ensemble superhero movies, but that's pretty much all that they are. And that's by no means, a small success. That is by no means a small triumph. No one had done superhero movies as effectively as the MCU movies have done them, but there is a kind of diminishing return there, I think. So what we saw in the second phase of the MCU was an expansion of the possibility space. We can now tell different stories. We can tell outright sci-fi stories, as we did with Guardians of the Galaxy, Volumes 1 and 2. We can tell kind of quasi-mystical stories, as we did with Doctor Strange. We can have outright comedies, as we did with Thor Ragnarok, and we can do heist movies. We can do smaller scale. We can also do, John Hughes coming of age movies with Spider-Man Homecoming, which is a movie that I absolutely adore, and which I think 2017 was a terrible year in a number of ways, but it was a knockout banner year for superhero movies. And I think that the top three movies of that year, the top three superhero movies of that year, are all extremely strong. I loved Spider-Man Homecoming. I loved Wonder Woman. I loved Thor Ragnarok. I even quite liked the Justice League movie. So it was a banner year, but for me, what elevated Spider-Man Homecoming above the other films is its heart, is its personal touch, is its small-scale focus, and its intentional, thematically resonant small-scale focus on this one individual hero, or on what it is to be a hero. And we're going to talk a lot about that. We're just going to talk a lot about the MCU, is what I'm saying. Lily's asking, Cap trilogy, was there ever a third Captain America movie? Civil War. We don't think of Civil War as being a Cap movie because arguably it is Avengers 3 rather than Cap 3. But yes, technically speaking, Civil War is the third Captain America movie after the first Avenger and the Winter Soldier. So yes, Jenna's agreeing with me here. Civil War was technically a Cap movie, even though it was mostly an Avengers movie. I absolutely agree. The thing is that when Civil War takes its turn into the third act, it winds up being a Cap movie again. which feels frustrating because it's been an Avengers movie for its first 2 acts, right? It feels as though it's losing track of its story, but what it's actually doing is giving us a pretty rousing finale to the Cap trilogy. I think that Civil War works really interestingly as Avengers 3. I think it works beautifully as Cap 3. Of course, Cap is my guy, and I'm just now realizing I'm wearing my Cap shirt. You guys, I'm wearing my Cap shirt right now because Cap is my guy. Sometimes you plant yourself like a tree by the river of truth. Jen is also asking, is Vinton the one who's sick? Will his voice be back in time? No, Vinton is hale and hearty as ever. Sarah is the one who is sick. Sarah has been laid low by a terrible cold, which is why our Sailor Moon episode isn't coming out today. We were supposed to record that on Friday, and unfortunately Sarah is just horribly under the weather and has lost her voice pretty emphatically. But I spoke to her yesterday. She's feeling much better, so hopefully we'll be able to record on Wednesday for the commentary track and on Friday for the Sailor Moon podcast, which will be released on Friday and Monday, respectively. Yes, Infinity War, says Sosa Sundare, is Cap 4, but this time the beard isn't Black Widow. Well, you know what? Well, no, the beard is literal. The beard is real in Infinity War. We've seen that. Dark and full of secrets, as has been said. But yes. Angela's asking, is Spider-Man Homecoming on your MCU commentary schedule? I forgot. It isn't actually on the commentary schedule right now, but that is an ongoing conversation. I think it probably will be by the time that we circle around to it. I think there may be a bonus episode of a Spider-Man Homecoming commentary. The reason that we didn't put it on the schedule is just that we just talked about it, and we talked about it a lot. So we weren't quite sure whether or not we wanted to revisit that, but we will want to revisit that. We also won't be doing a commentary track for Black Panther because it won't be available on DVD by the time that Infinity War comes out, but we will have a Black Panther episode when that movie is released in just a few weeks' time. I'm so excited for Black Panther. This is the Marvel movie about which I am the most excited. I am so looking forward to Black Panther. So we'll definitely be doing an episode on that too. Yeah, poor Sarah has been taking her hits lately. It's absolutely true. There was a flu that went around, and then a cold that went around, and plus just generally feeling a little under the weather. But yes, good. Okay, so all of that is to say, a busy week here at Point North. Let's talk a little about the book club poll. If you support me over at patreon.com, if you support me at Coffee, if you support me at PayPal, if you support Point North in any way, then you should have access now to the book club. I'm refreshing this page so that I can tell you right now what is in the lead. Oh, a lot of early voting and too early. Okay, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Okay, so right out front, we have A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle and Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, the dear departed Terry Pratchett. Both fantastic books. I have a great deal to say about both of them. Those are currently holding 35% of the vote each, so they're looking pretty strong right now. Though I should say 35% of the vote does not mean that the rest of the nominees have 30% of the vote split between them, because you can vote for multiple things. You can vote for everything that interests you, and we'll just take the most popular things. But right now, that looks like A Wrinkle in Time and Good Omens. Afterward, we have Stardust by Neil Gaiman. We have Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Always a Bridesmaid, Never the Bride, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Dr. Horrible Sing-Along Blog, and Arrival from 2016, a really interesting, progressive, hard sci-fi movie, which I find completely fascinating, which is, of course, anchored in the study of linguistics and the importance of communication and of a kind of empathy, really, with a really interesting third act twist, too. I won't delve into that in case you haven't yet seen Arrival. If you haven't, you should. It's a very good film. So we're going to announce the winner of the new book club poll in Friday's Q&A session, and then we'll begin our discussion of that next week. If it's a movie, then we'll probably do 1 week, maybe 2. If it's a book, we'll probably schedule something like 4 weeks. There are a couple of video games. There are a couple of seasons of TV shows on there, too, so we might expand the scope of the book club just a little bit. But right now, it looks as though we're either going to be talking about A Wrinkle in Time or we're going to be talking about Good Omens. Either way, I'm very, very happy with all of that. There's a lot. Rayla Lynn is asking, yes, something else that is happening today. Rayla Lynn is asking, are you still planning on having guests on Dear Mr. Potter? Not guests in the sense that I will have company for the regular episodes of Dear Mr. Potter, because that I think is very hard to integrate, honestly. And more than anything else, it just wouldn't be fair to have someone else sitting on the call while I hold forth about Dear Mr. Potter, about Goblet of Fire in particular, because there's just so much to say. But there will be extra episodes of Dear Mr. Potter and of There and Back Again. These will go out in the regular feed. These aren't patron-exclusive episodes or anything like that. But there will be some roundtable discussions. I am contacting people right now. I am in the process of putting those things together. I am hoping to have at least the first episode of whatever this occasional series will be before the end of January. So I'm very much looking forward to do that. Of course, it is more complicated. The more people you have in a show, the harder it is to schedule, appropriate recording times. But I'm hoping to get that taken care of probably next week, and then we'll have that in the feed before the end of January. We're going to be talking about about voice and representation and culture and society and politics and our perspectives as readers and as fans and particularly within the context of Dear Mr. Potter. We're going to be talking about the sorting hat, and we're going to be talking about houses, and we're going to be talking about tribal identity and the tokens and markers of identity. I'm so excited to have these conversations. So yes, all of that is coming very soon. That was all delayed, of course, because of the Christmas break and because people are out of town or busy or snowed in large parts of the country right now. I'm really looking forward to all of that. Karen is giving a pitch here for Station 11, which you should all totally read. Astoundingly good book. Yes, that is on the list. That is on the list too, by Emily St. John Mandel. Not a lot of support for that right now, but these things can change. The last time that we did one of these book polls, Avatar: The Last Airbender was pretty much winning from the beginning. I've also revised it this time just a little bit. I was going to talk about the entirety of Avatar: The Last Airbender. There is too much. Let me sum up. We'll do the first season of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and then maybe circle back around to later seasons as we progress. Yes, good. Ray Lillen says it would be fun to be a part of that. Can I put my hat in? Yes, absolutely. Just email pointnorthmedia@gmail.com. If you're interested in taking part in any of these roundtable discussions, then please get in touch. pointnorthmedia@gmail.com. As I say, I don't have a real schedule for that yet. I'm going to alternate between Dear Mr. Potter and There and Back Again. But as I've been having some of these discussions in a kind of informal way, I've been realizing that there are some broader topics to discuss about fandom and about critical discourse and about pop culture analysis and the interrogation of the texts which are foundational to our understanding of pop culture and therefore culture. The overlap between pop culture and culture now, thanks to the disintermediating power of the internet, thanks to the removal of many significant gatekeepers, pop culture is in a very large sense now just culture. The delineation between pop culture and high culture, as was, is pretty much now eradicated. And I think that there are some really interesting texts which kind of straddle that line too, which would be fascinating to interrogate. Maybe we'll skew a little more orthodox in one of the upcoming book club polls, just to see what we can do with a modern perspective on some classic texts. I really want to talk about Shakespeare, you guys. I really want to talk about Shakespeare in the context of modern critical discourse. Particularly the kind of critical discourse in which we are all engaged here at Point North Media. This kind of positive, interrogative kind of critical discourse. I obviously firmly believe in the value of all of this, in the positive and enthusiastic analysis of things which we love, and the wresting of meaning and significance from these texts. This is something that I consider very important, and there are a lot of conversations to be had in that space. So stay tuned. There may be something else happening in that sphere in the months to come. This is not going to be an immediate announcement, but in the months to come, there may be something very interesting happening there. Yeah, Michael is asking, where does the idea of the monoculture fit into that? I wonder. This is one of the big challenges that we're confronting, right? To what degree do we believe in the existence of a monoculture? To what degree are we interested in conversations about? We're very interested in conversations about. To what degree are we compelled by arguments of cultural imperialism, the conquest of popular culture? To what degree has Western popular culture completely dominated the popular cultures of other spheres? There are going to be some discussions in this series, assuming that this series takes shape into a series. There are going to be some discussions about other cultural traditions in which I am very, very poorly versed. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot and reading a lot, and probably, in fact, stepping aside from some of those discussions to let people who know more about it have the platform and have the podium and discuss these things. I'm fascinated by this whole area, and to do this in a Point North consistent tone, that is to say, to do it with our usual exuberance and enthusiasm and positivity and intellectual rigor, I think, is going to be really, really interesting. So yes, lots more to come if any of you are interested. If any of you have specific questions, if you have questions about Harry Potter and Tolkien in particular, or about pop culture in general, email pointnorthmedia@gmail.com. That is the best way to get in touch with me. At least it's one of the ways in which you can get in touch with me. I have been working this weekend on a particular project, which I'm now mostly ready to announce. It's a little rough and ready, but I know that you guys are going to forgive me if some of the tires need to be kicked and some of the exposed wiring needs to be tucked back behind smooth, sleek paneling. I have been trying to find, over the course of the last year, trying to find and create spaces in which we can have these conversations. And we've been having these conversations on the Patreon blog a little bit, via email, certainly via Twitter, not so much on Facebook, because Facebook is just awful and the worst. We've been having some conversations over on Discord, but Discord is not finding its purchase with the Point North community. I think that's partially because it feels very overwhelming. Discord can be, I think I just said discourse twice, but I meant Discord, not Discourse, the commenting platform that's out there. I spent a lot of time looking at social media commenting platforms, basically, over the course of the last few weeks. All of this is to say that there are a number of conversations which are happening in a fragmented way, scattered across the internet. And I am the only common thread between those places, which is fine because I get to have those conversations. And for me personally, that's wonderful, but we don't get the full enrichment of the wonderful Point North community. We don't get all of these different perspectives and all of these different voices and all of these different ideas. And I would love to create a space in which we can better foster these discussions. All of which is to say, pointnorthmedia.com/forum. It is available now. It's actually up now. You can go and register for the new Point North Forum right now, pointnorthmedia.com/forum. As I say, it is a little bare bones right now. Everything is working. Everything is there. You can register and start having conversations and all of that good stuff. But this is going to be a protected space where we can engage in the kind of work that we do here at Point North, where we can have debate and conversation and games and fun and hilarity and flirtation and all kinds of things that we have been doing in all of these various pockets of conversation all over the internet, whether it's on Discord or it's on Twitter or it's via email or it's over on Facebook or it's, as I say, on the Patreon page, via direct message, via text message sometimes. All of those conversations, I mean, they'll still continue. It's not as though I'm stepping back from any of those spaces, but this gives us a focal point. It gives us a water cooler. It gives us a safe and inclusive and positive space where we can talk about these stories that we love. So pointnorthmedia.com/forum. It's working right now. I'm probably getting emails right now of people registering, but I'm very excited. Jenna's saying, I also have trouble with forums. No, I know. Forums traditionally, and Jenna's also saying that Discord is so overwhelming, even more so than Twitter, which I had a lot of trouble getting started on too. Here's the thing that I'm aiming for with the forum. What I want is to create a space that is as inclusive as possible for you, regardless of your voice, your perspective, your history, and the amount of time that you have to take part in and contribute to this community. I don't want it to be overwhelming. I want to create as many tools as possible for accessible conversation. That is my goal going forward. So it's going to take some time to add in extra plugins and extra functionality to the forum so that you can get, push notifications on your phone if that is the thing that works for you, or email notifications if that is the thing that works for you, so that I can tweet out interesting threads and kind of keep the Twitter community engaged that way, keep the Patreon community engaged. One of the things that we're going to do every week here on This Week on Point North is look at the forum and look at the big conversations that we've been having through the course of the week. Hey, here are 2 or 3 conversations which are fascinating, which are happening on the forum right now, which you can go and check out. That is something that I'm obviously, very passionate about as I talk about this. Yes, good. Michael's clarifying his comment on the monoculture there, talking about a shared sort of monolithic culture as opposed to a fragmented, democratized culture. Yeah, it's interesting in that we have simultaneously seen thanks to the removal of intermediary forces and the removal of gatekeepers and the opening up of what is, in effect, the world's greatest ever broadcast platform, the internet, we've seen simultaneously the fragmentation of cultural communities, the kind of accretion of tribal identities around pop cultural artifacts and pop cultural totems. You know, we've seen people identify themselves more than they ever have before as Marvel guys or DC girls or people who love this particular series or people who hate that particular series or whatever. We've seen that kind of tribalism increase, which has actually led to a more diverse and more democratic is probably the wrong word. Not exactly democratic, not exactly meritocratic system, but certainly a more diverse system. We've seen that arise. But in aggregate, what that has done has kind of torn down some of the old preservation, some of the old walled gardens, some of the old safe spaces for other cultural perspectives to exist. You know, there is a steamroller aspect to the... not exactly a destructive aspect. It's more like, you know, the Borg, I suppose. This is the forced adaptation of your pop cultural discourse into the greater pop cultural discourse. We've seen that happen, and that has been both good and bad, as I think all, you know, social change is. It is both good and bad. The democratization of conversation has been great. The empowerment of underrepresented voices in our community has been fantastic. But some of those spaces have become contentious, and some of those spaces have become outright, you know, hostile, have become outright violent. And, you know, if you've been following, I mean, video gaming is probably, I suppose, the most powerful example of this over the course of the last few years. If you've been following the Gamergate movement and the attempted forced redefinition of what a gamer is or what games are and who games are for, that is a result of the democratization of that space. You know, as that space was opened up, people tried to push back against it. People with personal agendas, with which I am in no way sympathetic, tried to push back against that and limit the kind of discourse surrounding games and the kind of conversations that were permitted around games. That is, you know, part of our evolution, part of our kind of cultural adolescence now. I think that it is possible to have both a global, inclusive community that is also permissive and fragmented in a beautiful and complex way. That is what I want to see personally. Just not even as someone who creates in this space, not even as someone who contributes to this conversation, but just as someone who loves these conversations and would be having them anyway. That is what I want to see. I want to see every opinion. I want to see every perspective. I want those voices to be amplified. I want it to be perhaps a little more meritocratic than it is now. I want these platforms to be opened up a little more to simply, you know, quality argument and insight. That would be really fascinating to see. And I want the snark drained out of it. I want the regressive, reactive kind of hipster cool of it all to just stop, to just really stop. There are so many fun conversations and fascinating conversations that we could have that have nothing to do with, you know, hashtag not a real Star Wars fan or hashtag not a real Harry Potter fan or whatever. Yeah. Lily is leaving us to go and get started on her day. That's very good. Good. Okay. Am I making facial expressions as I'm scanning your messages here? Yeah, no, it's pretty fun. It's pretty good. Good. All right. Yes, as Michael says, irony kills true discourse. Michael, never have truer words been spoken. You are so very right. Irony kills true discourse. And snark, as Aaron Sorkin said in the newsroom, is the idiot's wit. There's so much to talk about. There's so much good that we can do here. There's so much engagement that we can have and so much empathy that we can share, and all of it is undercut by irony. All of it is undercut by holding ourselves at one remove and refusing to express that passion which makes us vulnerable, that passion which opens us up to exactly the kind of criticism that is seeking to shut down these discussions online. That is why the Point North Forum is going to be something of a safe space. It is going to be a walled garden, not in the sense that we're going to quell, you know, disagreement, but disagreement will be civil. Disagreement will be positive and will not be rooted in, you know, personal attacks on people who happen to disagree with you about Harry Potter, or people who disagree with you about Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Twilight or whatever it is that fills you with enthusiasm and passion. Okay, all of that is said. Is that everything? Is that everything? Is that it for this week? I think that's it for this week, you guys. PointNorthMedia.com/forums. Also, head on over to the Patreon page, patreon.com/PointNorthMedia. Cast your vote for the new book club. Let me just refresh this and see if we've had any movement here. Uh, we have had some movement, but it's still a dead heat. Still a dead heat right now between A Wrinkle in Time and Good Omens. If that continues, I'll probably just schedule the next 2 book clubs, honestly. I definitely want to talk about A Wrinkle in Time before the movie comes out, so that may force my hand when it comes to the scheduling. But then again, I want to talk about Good Omens before the TV show comes out. So here we are, awash with fantastic adaptations of books that I personally adore. So those are probably going to be the 2, unless there's a huge swing. I am, at your beck and call here when it comes to the subjects that I discuss here at Point North. Unless there's a huge swing in the voting, those will probably be our 2 next book club topics. And I'm thinking probably 3 or 4 weeks for both of those. I think that feels good. Good Omens, if you've never read it, is just a knockout book. And obviously A Wrinkle in Time. I mean, A Wrinkle in Time is incredibly powerful and incredibly important. Let's wrap this thing up then, you guys. To recap, tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. I'll just emphasize that because I know many of you here in the live chat are registered for this class, and it is not happening at my usual evening time slot. It's 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, Between Worlds, Session 1. That class is going to run about 90 minutes, and then there's going to be a little time for Q&A. Afterward, we're going to be covering the origins, the very beginnings of folklore and myth, what folklore and myth really are, what fairy is, what fantasy is, how we understand these terms. We're going to equip ourselves with the vocabulary that is going to cover our discussion for the next 6 weeks. That's going to be really great. If you haven't yet registered, you have about a half hour, I suppose, from the conclusion of this live show. Head on over to pointnorthmedia.com, click the classes button, and you can register now for the Between Worlds class, which is going to be fantastic. I think there is maybe 1 space left. So if you're curious, you can head on over and do that right now. So that's tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central. That is January the 9th. Dear Mr. Potter, 38, chapters 4, 5, and 6 of Goblet of Fire as we venture forth to the Quidditch World Cup and face once again the Dark Mark. I'm very much looking forward to that discussion on Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central. There and Back Again 47. Chapter 2 of Book 4 of The Lord of the Rings as we venture into the Dead Marshes with Gollum and Frodo and Sam. And then on Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, we're doing all afternoon sessions this week so that I can clear some space to go and see The Last Jedi and write that story in Star Wars lecture. 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central on Friday afternoon. That is January the 12th. That will be just a loosey-goosey Patreon Q&A in which I will announce the new book club text. That is going to do it, though, for this week. That is going to, or that, all of that in aggregate will be the rest of our week. That is going to do it for this particular session of This Week in Point North. Thank you all so much for joining me. Thank you all so much for being here with me. You guys are fantastic. It's an absolute pleasure to talk with you as always. Oh, and I will say too that last night at the very end of the There and Back Again session, I believe it was Brian who brought up the fact that I don't have a good sign-off for There and Back Again. I'm almost 50 episodes into There and Back Again, and I don't have a good sign-off. So if you have a good Tolkien-related sign-off for the end of There and Back Again, get in touch. You can email pointnorthmedia@gmail.com. That's going to do it for our discussion today. The newsletter is going to go out. The calendar will be updated within the next half hour. I will talk to you all again very soon. Until then, take care. Have a great Monday. Stay warm. I'll talk to you soon.